All right, the meeting is now being recorded. If anyone objects to this, please state so at this time. All right, I see no objections, so we will continue recording. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to JENC. Today's date is July 28th, 2021. Thank you all for being here with us today. And we did have an agenda. Mr. Harris, did you receive the agenda? Mr. Harris, did you receive?
I was muted. Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. Because I know CTA does an agenda, but I didn't receive anything from you guys, so I just put some things together and send them out to you. And I didn't know if you had any additions. I didn't see anything that came in via email. Did you have any additions that you wanted to propose?
No, we figured that we would go through the dates for teachers as it relates to evaluations. How are we going to evaluate this year? Those things are on here that we're really concerned about. So we're good.
Okay, so we captured everything. Great. So let's just kind of dive right in. The first thing on the agenda is the CTES review, and we have Mr. Anthony Daughtry here to do that for us. So Anthony, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can take off with that.
Thank you, Darnice. I'm going to share my screen right now. This is the Word doc version of the proposed FY22 CTES handbook, and highlighted some items and crossed out some items that are of importance for the year. First, just a couple of simple ones before we get to the dates, and I was going to share this with y'all after the meeting. We had an update to our mission statement that just needed to be done for the school district, and also the board members and principals and other members of JENC. I was going to go through that. I know it might be some simple stuff varying to what we're going to go into with the dates, but just a thought with coming up regards to the superintendent. We currently have Dr. Fenoy in here. I don't know if it matters. That's why I wanted to ask to the group if we need to keep Dr. Fenoy in there or put in an addition with Mr. Burke as well.
I think he was sworn in today pending the board approval, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and Anthony, now,
yeah.
If these changes being made, it's difficult to see. Is there any way you can help us with that? Particularly,
yeah. Let me try to make it even bigger. Sorry, Theo.
Okay. All right.
Better.
Well, maybe too good. Let's see how the part you changed. Let's see how that looks.
Okay.
I was able to read what you said you're making a change, and I couldn't read it.
No problem. And as always, just a reminder, no changes will be made until there's consensus. So anything I put in there will still need your say-so as well. So this was my piece about the mission statement, the mission of the school district. We had the old one about providing world-class education in there, when our mission of the school district is to educate, affirm, and inspire each student in an equity-embedded school system. So that was just a quick note of the change of the mission statement. Board member updates. We also had vice chair position change, and then Mr. Shaw, of course, retired. And then this was the item I was mentioning about the superintendent title. So I think as of tonight, as Mr. Katz just said, I can add Mr. Burke into that place. We are welcoming also, just a kind of side note here, I think it's Dr. Armas. I just always call him Jesus. Our principal of Royal Palm Beach High School is taking over for Dr. Atherley. Thank you so much for being here. We really do appreciate that, sir.
Yeah, just keep calling me Jesus.
You got it. District staff updates. We have Mr. Tierney replacing Mr. Oswald as our deputy soup / chief of schools. Mrs. Daniels replacing Ms. Carras as director of professional development. I've Mark Howard removed here towards the bottom since Mark retired. And then this was, I think this is more of a question for Darnice and Vicky, is are we keeping Kevin as a consultant? Is that an issue, or?
No, he wouldn't be a consultant anymore. If Miss Daniels has somebody she'd like to replace him with, that's fine, but he doesn't need to be on there.
Okay.
Anthony, do we need to add Adam to replace Mark?
I can do that. And then I'll probably just need to confirm that his title, Paul, is he is it still research evaluation assessment for him?
I'll send you his official title.
Okay, thank you. All right, so unless there's any questions about, like I said, this isn't like the ground shaking stuff. I just, it's part of the pieces we go over every year. So I just want to make sure we went through it. Any questions, any comments, concerns about the information on this page? Really just informational. Okay.
Theo, did you have something to say? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, no, I was looking at the teachers. I couldn't see, what he had.
Oh, I'm sorry, Theo. I still have for CTA side, I have Miss Hatch, Mr. Longhofer, and Miss Seidel.
All right.
And then, of course, you, Justin, and Randall.
Okay, and I wanted, if we can have as a consultant, Brianna Cope.
Oh yeah, of course, absolutely.
She's our PD person.
Yep, you got it. Thank you for the reminder.
Thank you.
I'll update her title. There were no changes here. Again, the mission statement. Sorry for the scrolling. All right, this one is just a slight maybe pass to Paul. Will we have updates that you'll be proposing to JENC for this piece, Paul?
No, that should say stable. That's the piece. The one thing that we, we're reviewing Success Maker, right? So the one thing with Success Maker that happened this year that came to my attention about a month ago, a little less, is that because of the distance learning and the shift back to on campus, they reset several students' initial placement mid-year because of that transition, or when they came back. So I think we go another year without the Success Maker, and we'll look at it for inclusion this coming, not for the 2021 school year, but we'll look at it again for the 2022 school year when that initial placement happens in the time we would expect it to and sticks for the year and outcomes. The model still, looks to be working about the same way the iReady math model worked. But, again, with that change in initial placement, I think that is enough to reduce the teacher's trust in it for this year, that it makes sense to leave it off the table for the 2021 evaluation. So, again, continuing with this, though, as it's written here for the 2021 school year, yes. And then 2022, a couple of things will shift a little bit. For example, the grade 4, the second row there, the grade 3-4 ELA, we'll have pre and post test scores for 4th grade again. So that'll go back to the standard FSA model that it was in the past. But yes, I'll have some updates.
All right, on the Success Maker, would it still be a decision to include mid-year, or would it be something different?
Yeah, I think it would remain the same decision to include mid-year, because like I say, we've looked at the data 3 years now, and the models have been reasonable from a mathematical standpoint, but there have been, we'll call it, application questions that have come up. That first year, the initial placement took a lot longer for kids than some thought. The second year was 2020, so Obviously, that everything was off the table that year. And then this past year, the resetting of initial placement when kids were coming back on campus for various reasons. Again, it's the trust factor more than the math factor, I think, at this point. Mr. Katz, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just for my memory, if we're not using Success Maker for this past year for K through 4 math, what is the metric?
So the teachers who are typical classroom, typical whole class teach, all subject teachers, not non-departmentalized, would be based on ELA. In K to 2, it would be iReady. In 3 and 4, it would be iReady as a pre-test and FSA as post-test. Again, that's a 1-year thing for the 4th grade because of the no 2020 scores. The departmentalized teachers in that space would default to the ELA scores of their students. When we looked at this last year, when we were planning for 2020, that was going to impact, I believe it was at the time, like 20 teachers district-wide, because there were that few departmentalized K to 2 math teachers at the time. Obviously, we can go back and take a look again, but so it'll essentially be primarily ELA for those teachers.
So can we make a request that either if it could fit into this chart or if not, to put an asterisk and maybe a statement at the bottom of it underneath it stating that absent the use of Success Maker, these are the metrics, because we do get regular questions from teachers. Sure. Concerns about Success Maker, and I'm always not 100% positive because it's not on the chart to refer to. So that
no worries. We can add a note. And again, what the intent for this being the next year's plan would be that we will end up using Success Maker. Again, barring something else happening confusing like this happened the last 3 years of a Success Maker implementation.
Thank you.
Okay. Before we move on, of course, I'll ask if there are any other questions, but just to say for the record, I'll make an update of this with Paul, and then we'll share out with all sides, and then if there's approval, then we'll move forward. If there are other questions, then I'm sure Paul would be happy to answer them. So any other questions for the group about the student performance piece, the student performance measures?
Yeah, can you just scroll up a little bit just so we can review the rest of it? All right, thank you, sir.
You are always welcome. Okay, move on to the next piece. If I scrolled correctly. Again, no changes to the scoring component rubric. For definitions. There was a piece in here with the definitions about the Florida state standards. I think we missed this kind of last year, but we do have an update coming with the best standards. So I think I might want to put the language in there for that as well. But I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
From the assessment side of things, Anthony, we're still a couple of years out on that. So I don't know if we want, I mean, I don't think it would hurt to add something, but I don't know that we necessarily want to pull Florida off just yet. Maybe it's a transition paragraph or something.
Okay. I like that. That helps.
So you're going to add that, but that's added as opposed to deleting?
Yeah, so we can put a footnote about I'll put a footnote about the transition to best, but still keep this language in here, as Paul said, the transitional pieces. It'll probably help save us in the long run, at least with questions for people that might be wondering about that piece. Okay. So we're now in section 4, the processes document leading into the updates with the dates. There was one area that I kind of wanted to bring up was as a result of the pandemic, we added language concerning recording through Google Meet for teachers that chose to do so. When it comes to the pre-conference and the post-conference process, kind of received a lot of feedback on that being helpful for the teacher scheduling, also the administrator scheduling. The fact that instead of having a face-to-face where I showed up to your classroom or you came to my office, it was a lot easier to engage through Google Meet. It saved time, and any physical health issues, it kind of made it easier for the most of the feedback we've received. I know you guys get feedback as well, so we wanted to talk about the possibility of adding this language of or through Google Meet to engage in the pre-conference or post-conference for the formal observation. Adding on the language of just, kind of taking on my staff developer piece, by having it through Google Meet, we save that awkwardness of where are we holding this? If it's in my office as an administrator, that might create this supervisory approach and kind of create a different environment other than coaching. If it's in the classroom, it might have different connotations as well. I see Gordon, you have your hand up. Gordon, would you like to share your thoughts, please?
Thank you, Anthony, and good morning to everyone. I apologize for my tardiness. Calendar issue, but I think we're okay. During the year, I can recall several conversations with teachers who found it very convenient to do these kinds of meetings by way of Google Meet. But other than that, I mean, I don't know where others might be, have not had any of those conversations yet. So I'd be intrigued to hear how everybody's comments are as we go forward to see what direction we might want to go with this. Thanks.
Thanks, Gordon. Justin?
We've discussed some of this internally because obviously the topic has come up on a number of specific instances where virtual may or may not be the path to go. But at this time, we cannot support this. Maybe in a year we could revisit this, but right now we would not support eliminating the current face-to-face pre and post conference meetings.
Can you elaborate on your objection to that? Again, this is, expedient, sufficient. We're trying to limit contact that the teachers have. I know that that's their concern. So if you want to elaborate on that, I'd appreciate it.
We simply don't support rushing to make changes that only came about during the pandemic while we're still in the tail end of the pandemic. That's as I don't feel like I need to necessarily go much further, but we
would ask that you go further because, like you said, we're still in a pandemic. We're maybe hopefully at the tail end, but we're not sure. I mean, that's clear from the numbers and the fact that the way that this is going in the state. We are trying to protect the teachers and keep them as safe as possible. Face-to-face meetings are more than 15 minutes. That's our concern. I mean, obviously that would be a discussion between the principal and the employee. That would be a mutual agreeable discussion between them. But just as you and I have had conversations, we don't think there should be a dictate from above. There should be a conversation between the principal and the teacher on what they're most comfortable with. So
to clarify with regards to this topic, because it's new, we do not agree. We feel these are important meetings that provide opportunities for face-to-face human interactions versus these meetings which can lead to people being distracted or multitasking without your knowledge. Someone could be doing multiple things and not paying attention. We just feel that evaluations dictate compensation. They dictate whether or not you may or may lose your job with the district, depending on the outcomes. And we have not begun to think about the consequences, positive or negative, to the point that we would be able to make this agreement. We respect that the school district is looking out for people's health, but we would certainly think that above a one-on-one meeting between two adults who can mask optionally or get vaccinated. There are every other scenario that exists in a school where it is more pressing to be concerned about health. This is kind of almost literally the safest type of interaction because it is the closest number to one person being in the room.
Well, I just want to clarify. So if the teacher says to the principal, I would rather meet with you via Google Meet, the principal says that's fine. CTA is saying, no, they don't have that option.
We're saying that the current language says face-to-face, and at this time, we do not support changing it.
Oscar, did you have any comments?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Just for this particular year, I mean, I could see a scenario where a teacher is observed, and then later that afternoon, the teacher has to quarantine for 14 days because maybe a child or a spouse or someone in the house is tested positive, and we have that deadline window in order to have a meeting about an observation. And so that observation would then just go null and void if that person quarantines. The Google Meet would allow us then, if possible, to go ahead and debrief with that teacher. But that's the only thing that I could think of. I currently have an employee now who's already gone on quarantine again after international travel. So it is happening.
Thank you, Oscar. Christy, I'm sorry, I know you had your hand up before. Did you lower it? Did you have a comment you wanted to add?
I'm good.
All right, thank you, Christy. Hey, Justin, just to clarify, just for my own understanding, and I very much clearly understand your view. Is there any possibility of using language similar to what we used last year? We're saying a Google Meet may only be used with express permission of the teacher or expressed request of said teacher.
We can certainly reflect on that and get back to you.
Thank you. This way it gives the option if the teacher feels comfortable. But I do understand your view. I just wanted to propose that. All right, so we will table this part. Another area, now I crossed this out figuring our current conversation anyway, but the teachers can be observed delivering live instruction during a face-to-face or distance learning Google Meet lesson. Since there are no official full-scale district distance learning lessons, this text was crossed out for removal. Are there any comments on keeping this or modifying it?
Does that affect Palm Beach Virtual? I'm just curious. Does this agreement affect Palm Beach Virtual, and do they observe that way?
Palm Beach Virtual has a different structure. I've been working with them. I've kind of had to do a lot of side projects. I have an FLVS teacher in my house, so I've done a lot of learning on the structure. Their system is a little different. They use a different interaction. They use different software. Google Meet is something that they utilize from time to time. But when it comes to their observations, it is a different format and structure. What I will do, just to confirm, I can reach out to Mr. Henry over in virtual, just to confirm that this wouldn't impact their observational structure. But I know when it comes to their DBAs and the flow of how they support their students, it looks differently than what our traditional, or even our non-classroom teachers look like in the traditional schools. But I can research that and get a little more info to confirm.
Anthony, we need to strike that second line in there with teachers can be observed delivering the live instruction during face-to-face.
Yeah, that was the point that I was mentioning. Mr. Otero was wondering if this will impact Palm Beach Virtual. So I said I would talk to Mr. Henry just to confirm that this will not impact the teachers that he and his staff observe at virtual. I mean, this line didn't exist until this past year anyway, so it should hopefully not impact anything. But I do want to confirm that they are not. There are no provisos that would impact their observational structure, if that is okay with you.
Okay, yeah. What we want to be sure of is, even if it does, then we need to, probably structure something to support them. But this language we feel needs to go.
Understood. All right. I will follow up with Mr. Henry. I'll still keep this crossed out in the language for the CTS. And I will follow up with the group on what I hear back from him, if that is okay with everyone. I know everyone's favorite part, the dates. Okay, so last year we extended deadlines anywhere between 2 to 3, and in one case 4 weeks to accommodate the delayed start of the school year. And that structure, what I've done here was I've kept the original dates from last year, they're crossed out, but then I added proposed new dates for this year based on what would have been our previous rules in the last few years. None of the dates fall on top of each other. They're not in conflict with any major district events. However, I want you to look and tell me your thoughts. Seeing that Randall already raised his hand, I guarantee he has thoughts. Randall, please share.
I just wanted to say, I think you meant 2021 on the first one.
Thank you, Randall. Yes, you are correct. So if you would take a moment to look at these dates, process, and then if you have questions, please share.
Scroll up just one more line, please. Oh, okay.
Anthony.
Yes, Manda.
So I noticed for last year, you had the due dates for the informals or the formals on the same date, but you changed for both categories. But for this year, you have 2 different dates.
Correct. So for this year,
you have the 12, like the first one is 1210 for category A, and then category B, you have 12-3.
So the logic here was we were giving a little more time for the 1As because traditionally speaking at the schools, we have less 1A teachers than the 1Bs and 2s. So we were hoping to provide at least a 1-week buffer between the 2 groups of categories. Again, as always, these are completely up for discussion. So if, looking at your calendars, you think there might be an easier schedule, I don't want to say easier schedule, but a more accommodating schedule for our leaders, please let me know. I see Anne-Marie, you have your hand up. I don't want to dismiss you, Ms. Daniels. Did you have anything else to add before I move to?
No, I'll wait to see what Anne-Marie is going to say. I think we may be thinking the same thing. Go ahead, Anne-Marie.
Thank you.
I just noticed all the dates, so they end on a Friday, but February 26th is actually a Saturday. So I was just wondering if you want to change it to the 25th.
Yes, I will. Thank you for noticing that. Sorry about that.
The other pieces, and I don't know the principals that are online, what are their thoughts around having the 1As due before the 1Bs, because it'll give them time to kind of ease into it.
I'm just going to say that I like the dates that were chosen. I think for the 1As, it gives us time to meet with them prior to November 11th or November 1st, do the informal, have conversation. And then if there's steps or rooms for improvement, we can have that conversation, go in and do another informal if needed, but then also, have them ready for that formal December 10th. So I think that's an open date because it gives them, 1, 2, almost, 3 months into school, or I think they would be okay. So I support the dates that are on the calendar. Is there also, just while I'm talking, it says one formal and one informal, like, do they have the right to choose then the 1Bs? I know a lot of my veteran teachers would like to do their formal first. So it doesn't matter? Is that what I'm seeing?
So yes, we still have the language in for the 1Bs and 2s that the order is determined by the teacher. So if the teacher wants to have their formal or informal first, they still have that option. We're encouraging and reminding in the trainings that it should be communicated at the beginning of the year and established. Scheduling for this would make both lives easier. Randall? Okay, no worries. So again, as in any traditional year, if something does happen during the year where there is an unplanned event, such as a hurricane or other unfortunate event, these deadlines can be extended if this group comes together to agree upon an extension to said dates. So these are set in some very firm jello at this point. I'm going to scroll down just a little bit to point out the dates for the other pieces. And it is the professional growth plan and the evaluation periods. Now, the evaluation period for the mid-year is a week after, and then the final evaluation is 2 weeks after the last minimum observations are to be completed. So there's a window of time should the observations that were completed not provide the teachers with an accurate representation of their work, to request an additional targeted observation from their administrators during that window. We've also structured in enough time for the professional growth plan to be completed, and any evidence, if teachers choose to add some, would be added to their professional growth plans.
Okay, Randall, we talked about the time frame and preparing PD for the PGPs for them to be done. What date did we say? October 18th was the date we wanted because we wanted that Saturday or something?
Yeah, we were going to use that Friday and Saturday to do some PD for any teachers that needed additional support.
Okay.
We're hoping to anyway.
So we were looking at the 18th, which is that Monday, basically instead of the 13th, the 18th. I think the 15th, is that a work day or something? PDD day or something like that?
Yes, that was part of our logic. Is I know the principals, not all of the principals on JENC, but principals on JENC in the past and principals in our district have expressed wanting to utilize that PDD as a day to help their teachers, anyone that have not completed the process by then, but to utilize the PDD as a way to support them. So that was kind of why it fell on that. And historically speaking, we usually put the PGP deadline the middle of October.
Right, so
I don't have an issue with moving it to the 18th, but I'd love to hear other viewpoints as well.
I would agree that I always like to provide in any of those work days and professional development days for our Marzano liaison to work with our teachers on that. So I like having the 15th, and we wanted to stretch it out to that Monday. It's fine. I don't see a problem with that.
Thank you, Jesus. Gordon?
I've also, at my building at times, I've used one of those days to cover quite a number of teachers who might need some support to get through the process and even to walk them through it step by step to make sure that they were completed. So having that day available would be advantageous. I'd be in support of the 18th as well.
All right, I would say that's probably a good note that the 18th works for everyone. Adjusting that on the document. All right, one last piece to note about the PGP. As a reminder, the professional growth plan historically has needed, when you first have a PGP, you need to create your own self-assessment. So you take a self-assessment so you can rate yourself on the elements and decide which element you're going to use towards your own growth this year. We had a question, I believe, in the year past where the teachers had pre-observation data the year before and the option of taking the self-assessment. I believe last year it was decided that they would just take the self-assessment and there would be no pre-data used to help determine their baseline. So my question was for the group, do we want to revisit that teachers just take the self-assessment, or teachers take the self-assessment and also still pull from their last year's observation data?
Well, I guess I'd have to defer to Randall on that one, because, he, does the training for us on that. My thoughts on that is, what if there was something last year that I did recognize where I do need to work on, would I not have the option to select that without necessarily doing a self-assessment? But of course, the self-assessment is, it is a self-assessment. So, that may solve the problem too. I don't know. Randall, can you help me with that one?
Yeah, I mean, I like using the self-assessment. If a teacher, say they went to some training this summer and they learned about something that they hadn't used and they really just want to learn more about it. I know that's how I was maybe about 4 or 5 years ago when we went to one of those LSI conferences and heard a speaker, and they may not have been observed on it. So, I mean, I like keeping the self-assessment as an option for that.
Yeah, we definitely want to keep the self-assessment because any new teacher that comes into the district is going to need it. My question, though, definitely for the group is, are we at a point now where we can put in also pulling from the previous year's observations? I know that was an issue the previous year and the year before that. So we are 4 years into the model now. Do we feel we are at a comfortable point now to say, you know what, you will base part of your deliberate practice choices on what you observed upon in the previous year?
Well, right now it's an either or, right? The teachers can decide whether they wanted to use something from their self-assessment or something they were observed on.
So it's only from the self-assessment this year.
Yeah, because we had no data the previous year because there were no valid evaluations.
Correct.
I feel like this year, teachers were so panicked about the delivery with simultaneous, and I talked to so many veteran teachers that just felt unnerved doing their evaluation during their observations. I had a lot of veteran teachers tell me this was their worst observation ever. So I would be a little hesitant to suggest people use last year's observations as any sort of baseline just because it was such an exceptional year.
That is a good point.
But what about if a teacher, felt that, they learned, they saw an area that they want to work on, and can they just identify an area without the self-assessment? I'm not saying get rid of the self-assessment. That would definitely be an option. I'm just saying, is it optional for them to put in another area that they feel that, put an area in that they feel they need to work on? Because right now they'll be limited to results from the self-assessment. Am I correct?
Correct, because the system doesn't have anything to establish a baseline unless we tell it to. So that baseline is either established by the previous year's observation results, the self-assessment, or the combination of the two. So we need to have at least the self-assessment for everyone. But Randall's concern is one that we've heard as well. So I mean, just for the sake of moving things forward, I could say that we just do the self-assessment this year, and then next year revisit having the self-assessment and the pre-observation data, to be fair to the teachers.
All right.
Okay, I think that's really it with the dates. These pretty much are all we needed. I will put this into a more pleasing format, and then I can make a separate chart as we've done in previous years that's easier to refer to, and I will share that with the group. But unless there are any other questions about the CTES handbook, I will make the next draft, release it to the group for your approval and review. And the moment we have that, we can share with the schools to share with the teachers as well.
Yeah, so when you share the draft, it will be with the highlighted elements included, right?
Correct. Yeah, I'll still, and I'll give you a summary beforehand of what pages were changed, so this way you don't have to go digging, which I know can be painful as the CTES seems to grow each year. Jesus?
Yeah, Anthony, I don't know about the time frame, but I know that I would prefer to hand this out to our teachers during preschool. So I don't know if you can make that happen, but I think that would be preferable.
Agreed. So as we've stated here, I'm going to send out a copy of the draft. Please, at your earliest convenience, if you agree with the draft, just send a simple reply of I agree with the contents. If you do not, or if you think you need more time, and this again to Justin and Theo, I know in other years you've kind of you need a little more time to confer with some of your other associates. So I'm not trying to rush you. Just please let me know by email what your timetable is, and if there is no timetable and it's good to go, then we will run it up to Dr. LaCava for release and approval. So I'll try to get that email out to everybody before the end of today.
Right. Now, just remember now, because I don't want us to forget that the challenge we have is the information from Mr. Henry regarding, virtual.
Correct. Correct.
So, as long as we understand that we need to definitely review that. I think the dates and everything we're pretty much in agreement with.
And I was going to say on that note, then I could create a separate document just of the due dates, and then we could release that prior to preschool while we're still trying to figure out the item about the Google Meet. If that works for you. This way the CTS wouldn't be approved, but the dates would be approved, and that would help with planning purposes for everyone, teachers and school leaders.
Yeah, that was your concern, right, Jesus?
Yeah, I just think that, during preschool, I think, teachers want to know, people start, we start planning, and I think it's better for the teachers for them to know right out of the gate what those dates. So I think at least having the dates would be good.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we can read it. Any objection, team? All right, Anthony. Thank you, man.
You are always welcome. Okay, Darnice, I believe that concludes my portion of this.
Right. And thank you, Anthony. You always do a wonderful job of updating this and keeping us current and looking at the calendar, which is sometimes problematic, and getting all those dates together for us. So I appreciate all of your hard work on that and with updating the CTES. So again, just to reiterate, if you have any questions, please review it as quickly as possible. And I can also work with you, Anthony, with the virtual education. We do have some guidance in the contract on that. So we'll partner together and get that knocked out. I don't think that'll take a long time. All right, so moving forward on our agenda, the next item is the JENC representative introductions, and we have CTA up first.
Okay. Let's see. Hopefully, I can see everybody. All right. First, we have Randall Oddie, who's a staff person with CTA, representing us on JENC. And for middle school, we have Gordon Longhofer, who's at Pahokee Middle Senior, representing us for the middle school area. Then we have Chrissy Sadell representing a high school from Suncoast High. And we have Brianna Cope, who's our PD coordinator here at CTA, representing us in the professional development arena, so that we can make sure that whatever we need to help our teachers with, that we identify as a challenge from CTS, that we're on the same page there. And then we have Patty, Patty Hatch Sabers, okay, from for elementary school, and she's at Lake Park L, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, yours truly, Theo Harris, executive. Theo Harris, executive director of CTA, and of course, Justin Katz, president.
Okay, thank you, CTA. I see that your team looks pretty much like it did last year, so thank you for taking that time. We do have some additions to the district team, so I'm really pleased to announce that. First and foremost, we have Ms. Vonda Daniels, who is the new Director of Professional Development, and she's here with us today, and she is the prior principal of Vonda. You want to talk a little bit? Tell them where you're coming from, what you're doing.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Vonda Daniels, and yes, I've taken on the role of Director of Professional Development, coming from Northmore Elementary, where I served as principal there for the last 7 years. This is my 32nd year in education, and so as you can probably guess, education is definitely my heart. And so I'm very happy to be here and to be able to serve you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Daniels, and welcome to this side, to the Fulton Holland House, okay? All right, and then we have Dr. Jesus Armas. Okay, Jesus, I'm gonna back off the doctor. I know how you feel about that. Just wanted to recognize you properly, though. And I want to say a huge thank you. Jesus is actually going to be filling in for Ms. Atherley, who is now entering the next chapter of retirement. Which is something that I look forward to one day. And so, Mr. Armas, you want to say a couple of words?
I think anytime that Theo Harris is in the room, I think he can handle all the words for me. Theo and I started at Suncoast. Well, I was at Suncoast when I came in the district in 1994, and Theo was there. So we worked together way back then at Suncoast. In the old building, not that fancy new building that they have there.
Charge your dome.
That's right. Theo was I was a basketball coach, and Theo was our announcer. So yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Jesus. Please don't give Mr. Harris any announcement forms here in this meeting. We all know what that looks like, and we don't want to go there, but it's all good. All right, next we have up on our team, we have Anne-Marie Dilbert, who is our returning elementary representative on the JENC team. Anne-Marie, you want to say a couple of words?
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you. Hopefully you had a great summer, if that's what it was, and we're ready for a new year. So I just look forward to working with everyone.
Thank you so much. And we have our returning middle school representative, and Mr. Oscar Otero. Would you like to say a couple of words?
Yes, good morning. I've enjoyed being on the team, and I look forward to another great year. Thank you.
Awesome. We have Mr. Anthony Daughtery. Everybody knows Anthony because he's our CTES guy. So thank you, Anthony, for all you do for the team. We have Mr. Paul Houchins, our data guy. If he wants to come off of mute, he can. But I think hey, Paul.
Hello.
All right. And then we have, I think I got everybody but my boss, Vicki Evans-Paray, the Director of Employee and Labor Relations. And then myself, Darnice Marsh, I am the HR Manager for Labor Relations, and I am pleased to work with each and every one of you. So thank you for, committing your time and energy to make sure that we get all of these things in place for the teachers so that the evaluation process can be a smooth process for our employees.
All right,
so
Darnell,
thank you.
before we move away from the introductions, I didn't allow people to speak because I didn't know what kind of time frame we were working with. but definitely would want to give opportunity for our president and anybody else who want to have, say any words to do so.
I'm okay. Just thank you for everyone's time and efforts.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So the meeting is scheduled from 10 to 12, Mr. Harris, just to let you know, because I know you had said something about the time frame. But thank you for that. If anybody else wants to speak, you have the opportunity to do that. Definitely don't want anyone to feel short-sighted. So is there anybody else that wants to speak before I move forward with our agenda? All right. Some people are entering things into the chat. That's also a great way to communicate. So thank you, Gordon. All right, next up, we have FY21, the teacher final evaluation results. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Houchins to be able to provide some information on that.
So, I would have to defer to Anthony on, the other piece of this. But in terms of student performance rating, obviously, since that's tied to test scores, we're still kind of in a holding pattern, waiting on DOE for the release of everything but third grade ELA. We've started looking at the K-2 model and the grade 3 model, which are iReady and based on the release scores. As we discussed, I think midway through the year, we're looking at COVID learning option as an additional covariate in our modeling. And the initial pass with the iReady looked promising. It looks very similar to what 2019 looked like. So we're pretty confident that we'll be able to do student performance in a reasonable way this year. Going forward, again, we'll have more information to share once the remaining test scores are out, and then obviously, with every year, that ACE and IB data is the limiting factor on our final model around accelerated coursework, because those test scores don't tend to show up until mid-August. So that's where we are. We're, like I said, kind of in a holding pattern until we have scores. Anthony, do you want to speak on the other two components?
Sure. I'm going to share a document right now, share my screen, and then I, of course, will share the electronic version with you as well. This is the current counts, and Theo and everyone, please let me know. I'll try to enlarge it because I know it's not, I think, the best on Google Meet screen.
That's good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so here are the instructional practice numbers. So again, instructional practice for just common language. Instructional practice is the results of the observations that take place with the teacher through the observation instruments in iObservation, be it through the classroom teacher form or the non-classroom teacher form. We saw 93% of the teachers observed were at the highly effective range. 5% fell at effective, 0.2% at developing needs improvement, and 0.01 at the unsatisfactory. The not evaluated, we're still kind of going through the data, but these are numbers that are consistent with previous years. These tend to be teachers that did not contractually work enough days, might have been a medical leave, might have been sabbaticals, basically anyone that did not work enough days to be evaluated. Again, we're kind of fine-tuning that information, but I wanted to share the overall spread. And then in comparison, again, these are the instructional practice, which is the 1/3 of the evaluation, another 1/3 of the evaluation deliberate practice. We once again had 93% overall, highly effective, 3% effective, and then 0.4 developing needs improvement, and 2% unsatisfactory. Again, the not evaluated consistent with the ones above. So the majority of our teachers are at the highly effective level for the instructional practice and deliberate practice. Again, just to kind of bring that to light, that means 2/3 of the evaluation for 93% of the teachers is at the highly effective level. So our numbers overall should be close to that once we start piling in the student performance. Once I have all of that information from Paul, and then we migrate that into the PeopleSoft system towards the end of, end of summer's already here. Right here in the fall, as soon as we have those numbers, we'll share with you. Justin?
Anthony, do you happen to know of those 230 odd unsatisfactories? Is that it's safe to assume a good chunk of those are people who either were resigning or retiring and maybe just didn't care and submit?
Yes, that's usually it's the end of the evaluation window, and they might have been going into retirement. They might have selected the wrong element. I'd be speculating if I said anything, so I don't know if I can fine tune it, but I can tell you that the majority of those tend to be those that are retiring or moving on to a different profession.
Thank you. I was just curious.
Okay, I see you got FY19 there. Can we kind of see a comparison?
Yeah, absolutely. So for FY19, and here, let me go back, not to confuse everyone. I'm sorry. I just figured FY21 instructional practice, and then FY19 instructional practice. So we were 91% highly effective back in FY19, and we went up to 93% highly effective. I know we had concerns at the beginning of the year where we had many teachers that, as Randall shared before, but we had many teachers that just felt the pressure and felt like they were being pressured by their administrators. But then we received a lot of feedback from administrators that said they were trying to be as empathetic as possible, try to observe with grace. And that was part of the message we were pushing this year is, this is not a gotcha. This is a coaching model. Observe with empathy. And we saw a 2% increase. So again, 91% highly effective in FY19, 93% highly effective this year. Deliberate practice, though, that was where we saw the difference. And it's a small difference, but it is worth noting. Deliberate practice was 93% highly effective this year. Last year it was 94% highly effective. So, again, we saw people retire. We saw people leave the profession. So that could be that small percentage of a difference in interest in their deliberate practice this year. Again, I'm speculating. It would require a lot of deep research to see and getting testimonials from those teachers to see exactly why.
Yeah, because I guess the concern is, what did we do wrong with deliberate practice to have, the number increase? Am I correct? Didn't the number increase in 21 for unsatisfactory? Yeah.
Correct. We had 64 people in FY19 at the unsatisfactory level, and this year we had 234. Randall?
Was everybody taken out that might have been affected by that from being on a leave or anything like that? Like people maybe started their PGP, went on a leave of absence, never came back?
So that's part of the process we're working on right now. When we migrate, we take data from iObservation and we migrate it into PeopleSoft. Part of that process will then pull out anyone that took a leave of absence officially or took personal days or sick days. That was one of the challenges we had this year. Is the way PeopleSoft works for our end is we can only really track those on an official leave of absence. If someone at the school site was using personal days, well, then we're going to get that, but we'll get that through the processing once we move to PeopleSoft. So I think once we get those actual numbers, then we'll actually be able to go and do a little deeper digging.
So we'll expect this to probably change a little bit and perhaps not even show the increase in unsatisfactory.
I'm hoping. You know me. I don't want to say 100% and be wrong later, but I speculate that is the trend it's going to take. It's a good question. Thank you, Randall. All right. Any other questions on this? All right. Thank you.
Okay. You're going to send us copies of those?
Yep. Absolutely. I'll share. I'll click on the share logo in just a little bit and share it with everyone who's on this meet.
So thank you, Anthony and Paul, both for that particular, all of that information as it has to do with the final evaluation results. And thank you for the comparison, because I think that that shows us that our staff and our administrators are resilient in spite of the pandemic. You know, with all of the different things that were thrown our way, our administrators and our teachers were able to pivot and pivot successfully when it came to our students and providing the instruction that they needed. So that's awesome. And that takes us to our next item on the agenda, which is the goals for this committee, the JENC goals for 2021-22. So I will pause now and ask Mr. Harris if he's had an opportunity to be able to decide if CTA has any goals that they are setting to accomplish, if we could discuss those.
Okay, yeah, no, we didn't sit down and have a discussion about goals for JENC. We felt that what we were doing, we were on the right page, and we were pretty much satisfied with that. The only concern we had was making sure we clearly understood how teachers would be rated this year. So, you know, see how the COVID issue would impact them positive or negatively. And from what Anthony just showed us, it seems like, and I may be wrong, if I am, you know, team members, please chime in. Seems like, you know, other than the PGP issue, and I don't remember the instructional practice difference in unsatisfactory and needs improvement, but it seems like, you know, there was no major impact.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so thank you, CTA. I do know that there are some items that the district wanted to kind of talk about. One would be, I know that, you know, we've learned a lot this past year during the pandemic. And like I said, we were able to pivot successfully. And so we're just kind of taking what we've learned from this past year and also trying to apply the learnings that were successful to be able to incorporate those this year as well. And so one of the things that I know we're trying to be proactive on is the utilization of Google Classroom, especially in the form that deals with Mr. Harris. Okay, you got it, good. So especially in the form that deals with the pandemic that is still kind of looming in the Delta variant. And so we want to be proactive in terms of, you know, the utilization of Google Classroom and how the association feels as far as that's concerned, because that's definitely something that we're going to have to deal with, you know, down the line. So Justin, I see your hand is raised if you want to respond.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's something that if, I don't think JENC is necessarily the forum for it, but if the district has thoughts about the continued use, you know, we certainly would encourage them to provide them to us, you know, in either an MOU type format, or I guess a regular negotiations, if that was your inclination. Our understanding right now is that there is no requirement of any teacher to utilize Google Classroom. I would suspect the district will set up all the Google Classrooms because of unforeseen circumstances that could arise this year. But with that being said, beyond them being set up and ready for potential use, if the need arises, we would request that the district ask to negotiate any other use beyond the creation of Google Classrooms. We're going to convey to our members in an email either at the end of this week or next week as preschool starts that with the expiration of the blended learning MOU, there are no contractual requirements to use or otherwise update Google Classroom. And we would hope administrators in schools would not present it as a requirement because it expired. But as I said, we're certainly open to listening to any thoughts you guys have. They would just need to be codified in some sort of formal agreement if we were inclined to do so.
Okay, thank you for that. The reason why we brought it up here is obviously the connection between student performance in the evaluation. So we wanted to make sure that we did mention it and, you know, state that we are trying to be proactive in terms of anticipating any potential situations where that may be useful. So we'll get together and decide how we're going to move forward. I don't, you know, but we do want to be proactive. We don't want to have to come together after there's a situation.
Right.
Yes.
One of the things we were concerned about is, you know, with the high likelihood that kids are going to get sent home more frequently this year, particularly kids not wearing masks, that you may have a child who's being asked to quarantine for 10 days by the Department of Health, and they could conceivably do the work at home. And if the teacher's posting that kind of work on Google Classroom, the child's not going to fall behind, because we're talking about 2 weeks of learning loss, which is huge. If they're posting on Google Classroom, the child can do the work, the teacher's grading it as it goes. Because if we're talking about having to quarantine kids from a classroom, you may be quarantining 5, 6 kids out of one classroom. The teacher's then going to have to catch all those kids back up and still have to be doing all the grading of all the work that they have to do, which will come in, you know, 10 to 20 days later. So we were just looking to make it easier for our teachers. But if we need to negotiate some kind of MOU to make life easier for the teachers and better for the students, we can certainly do that.
So I guess I have 2 questions. One, well, not questions, maybe just statements. So one, so this is why I guess in the spring and in the summer, you know, I had asked some leadership at the district if there was any anticipation of continuing any of these MOU provisions, and that if so, we should definitely discuss them and negotiate them. So so we've certainly been open to that all spring and all summer. Now necessarily doesn't reveal itself to be the most ideal time, but we understand there might be a need. So that's one. 2, this is a question maybe, Darnice, when you opened this topic, you mentioned something about for evaluative purpose student scores as it relates to Google Classroom. What did you, I'm paraphrasing.
No, I think you misheard her. What I heard
Yeah.
was that because reason why you put it on JENC is because this ties to student performance. Because if you have a child who's out for 2 weeks, it's going to impact their grade. It's going to impact their learning. That's the only thing. And, you know, this really wasn't something that was a provision in the MOU that we thought we should go forward. Again, you know, we've been using the pandemic not as just a horrible thing to happen to us, but what did we learn? What did we do differently this year that seemed to work well for students? And we want to learn from that. And so if we have to continue to do MOUs that way, we can certainly do that. We just wanted to have that discussion here with the people who know the most about student learning, so that it's not just, you know, the district leadership and CTA leadership having these discussions. It involves the principals and teachers as well.
Understood. And thank you for that clarification. And well, the reason I bring it up is because it was stated when board members asked during previous board meetings, you know, what would happen if a student was quarantined, and the district's response to board members was, you know, they would be treated as if they were absent and be given makeup work. So we do understand there might be some middle ground to ensure that it's not just, here's some makeup work, come pick it up and go home. But we definitely do feel it needs to be negotiated, because outside of an agreement, we're not trying to set a precedent where teachers for the rest of the time have to run a virtual classroom on top of their real classroom.
No, we're not asking for a virtual classroom. We're not asking for virtual learning. We're not asking for them to record lessons. What we were talking about is them uploading work onto the Google Classroom so the child can be at home, access it on their computer, and do that work. I mean, I've seen some great work that our teachers have done where, especially particularly in math, for one thing, I mean, the Google Forms that they use actually grades it for them. It's a really nice, you know, work for the teacher. It provides a back and forth where they can, you know, for essay writing, it's a Google Doc. The teacher can make the comments right there in the Google Doc versus, you know, pen to paper. It's just, you know, using the technology we have and trying to build from that. Oscar?
Hi, thanks. No, I would just encourage both sides to really come up with those understandings. One of the things that we've said is that we can't go back to doing the things the way we've always done them. As a district, we've invested millions of dollars in getting a one-to-one computer per student. and it needs to be more than just a computer that gets turned on with no purpose. You know, we have to meet ELL and ESC accommodations, and let me tell you, a Google Classroom in every classroom is a great way, because a student, for example, who misses the agenda or doesn't fully understand the upcoming assignments, any of that stuff, that's very specific to ESC and ELL and their plans and their accommodations. A Google Classroom is an amazing way for all of us district-wide to be able to say that we're helping that student. And that should be the ultimate goal. And we've invested so much time and energy and training and in resources that I would encourage the district and CTA. And I mean, I'm willing to bet 95% of the teachers would embrace continuing with some kind of Google Classroom format. Thank you.
We're
I
open
think
minded.
I think the reality.
Go ahead.
I think the reality is we have learned a lot during the pandemic, and that was the context in which my comments were phrased under. And so, you know, with the reduction of the teachers having to actually grade items and having the classroom or that software to do that, to set it up that way, also the money that it takes to make copies, having them electronic, it also equips our parents to really be able to be more involved in that process. So, you know, I do think that, and that was the context that I was mentioning it you know, here in this particular forum, while we had both principals as well as teachers here who could weigh in. I think Gordon even talked about, you know, the face-to-face meetings in those, not the face-to-face, but having the Google Meets for the evaluations and how that was helpful with the teachers that he worked with. And so I think there are definitely some wins that we have gained in our quick pivot. And I think both parties need to really be open to discussing those wins and how we can apply those to this year, and definitely how we can avoid the lessons learned, but we can gain. And that gain will not just be advantageous for our students, but it'll be advantageous for the district and for the teachers as well. So I see Jesus, and then I see Vonda, if you have comments.
Yeah, I think, you know, pedagogically, I think it's more sound to be able to focus everything here. I agree with all the comments about being able to get students makeup work. And just a little anecdotal here, we have a summer PLC where we bring in our teachers over the summer to hear what their thoughts are, concerns, and how they want to move forward for this school year. And I had two different teachers who both referred to, when we were discussing other things, such as our classroom environment, a print-rich environment, they actually wanted to include Google Classroom as part of what they're doing. So a lot of our faculty members are actually, you know, they're trying to get me to make sure that it's part of what we're doing as a school culture. So just anecdotally, I think that I would agree with Oscar that if you look at really the majority of our teachers probably want to. First of all, a lot of them were doing it before the pandemic, right? We had a lot of teachers using it, and now, I mean, I think it's become second nature. So I would think that in the long run, it would be good for the system.
Okay, I think I had Vonda, and then Justin, and then Theo.
Okay, and just reiterating exactly what everyone is saying, but I've watched the teachers really embrace, as well as the students and parents embrace, the Google Meet, the Google Classroom versus the Google Meet. I understand what you're saying about the Google Meet and not being teaching simultaneously. That was definitely a strain on the system. But the Google Classrooms has offered so much, and it allows us to compete with the rest of the world. So the rest of the world is doing this, and if we opt not to include the Google Classrooms and that using that platform, then we are not going to be competing with the rest of the world. That's just my point. It provides enrichment opportunities where in the past maybe the teachers had to work a little bit harder to provide those enrichment opportunities, but it gave them the opportunity to provide differentiated instruction, let's put it that way, on all levels. And so the students have embraced it, The students love the computers, as well as going back to the point that we have all of this technology now, that we should just be moving forward and learning how we can use it even more to enhance the learning for our students, as well as making it efficient for the teachers. So this allows the teachers not to be standing at the copier making copies first thing in the morning. So there's so many pieces, and yes, the teachers have gotten better with that prep work and working together to share that responsibility, so it is not such a heavy load. So there are pieces we definitely will have to work through to make sure that we're meeting and accommodating the teachers and their, their time and their prep time. But I definitely don't want to take it out, and that would be something I definitely would recommend.
So I just want to make sure I clarify, we're not objecting to anything. We're just making clear that legally this has to be negotiated no matter how amazing it sounds. We just want to make sure that's our position. Second, I guess I've got a question or two. So with some of the comments and touting of virtual and Google Meets and so forth, I assume the district similarly believes that benefit would extend to other situations on a campus. For instance, the district is saying that they like this idea of Google Meets for conferences. I assume that virtual faculty meetings also would carry the same benefit, or that on duty days and PDD days, virtual PDD and duty days. I just want to make sure I understand that the district
we've been moving
are good.
We've been moving a lot of our PD to virtual. I mean, you've seen that our e-learning platform has expanded greatly. So we do have that. I can't speak for all the principals. Whether meetings can be held virtually or not. I mean, we're in discussions right now, and we've been told by we'll get into that about whether meetings can be held virtual or not, because again, you're correct. I mean, it is going to be, I think it should be the decision of the school site. I think it really needs to be whether the principals are comfortable with that, whether the teachers are comfortable. And if we're going to use the same criteria that we were assured by CTA would be the criteria for all the other meetings, was if all parties agree, then we can have them virtually. Then maybe that's what we set forth. And maybe we do need an MOU at this point, because I think we need to have that agreement in writing, because it appears that, we hear one thing one day and one thing another. And so if it's going to be that faculty meetings may be held virtually, but it has to be at the vote of the EBC or something like that, then maybe that's something we do need to have in an MOU.
So again, just to be clear, we at this point do not agree to anything being virtual relative to the discussion we've had today. I just want to make it clear that if we had conversations on other topics, that does not become a blanket position. And that, as I noted in an email you might not have seen this morning, we have some concerns that have already arisen regarding some virtual items that were discussed yesterday. I won't go into that here, but again, our position is that these are things that don't need to be taken lightly and advanced expediently for the sake of getting them on the books, because there is still time to reflect on the pros and cons in any given situation. Again, we're just making clear that things need to be negotiated, and that things are not just universally going to be accepted if touted as beneficial. We need to.
No, I think it's become very clear that we need to have more things in writing, because the verbal agreements don't seem to be working very well system wide. So Mr. Harris, you have your hand up.
Yes, and I just wanted to make sure we caution you that when we do have things that seem to work well, there is a process that we use when we want to make a change. It may sound good, sound good to the people in the room, but we have 13,000 people out there who have to execute these things. And we deal with terms and conditions. So when you add another term in the past, there seemed to be no consideration to additional compensation, for example, when additional work is being given. And so what we want to do is just make sure that we look at all aspects of it before we say that it's something we want to do because it's good. It may be good, but we may not be able to afford it, and so we just kind of want to make sure that that's the case. And then number two, another thing in our district, one of the things we tend to go to real quick is mandating that well, sometimes, not all the time, but mandating things. You know, each of you have said teachers have enjoyed it. If teachers enjoyed it, they all have the opportunity to still do it. I mean, there's nothing that limits them from being able to participate in Google Classroom, you know, right now. So you know, how it's done, and that's why we do negotiations, because how it's going to, you know, get done is what we work out, and not just run to saying that we're going to require everybody to do Google Classroom and that type of thing. Because as you know, we do have teachers who whose technology is not as strong as others, and so it may present a challenge, and it could be a negative impact unless we put something in place to make sure that they are appropriately prepared. Even though we did a lot during the COVID piece in terms of bringing people's skills up to date, we still may have some people who may be lagging behind, and we need to make sure we consider that as well. All right, that was my position on that.
All right. Do we have anything else on the agenda, Darnice?
That's it.
Okay, so there are no more goals? I thought we were going to go over goals.
Well, you said you didn't have any, Mr. Harris. I threw it out for CTA first.
Right, I'm
The
trying
only-
to, what were your goals?
That's the first one that I gave. That's the one that we had. We wanted to talk about Google Classroom. So that was it.
All
Yep.
right.
Okay. So thank you all for this meeting, for participating. We're going to give you back some of your time. That's always a good thing. Whenever I go to a meeting, I get out early. I'm like, woohoo. So we've been able to go ahead.
I would appreciate our team staying on for a minute because I wanted to discuss something with the JENC team going forward for our side. But go ahead, Darnice.
Absolutely. So thank you all for coming. We look forward to kicking off this school year. And, you know, we will be in touch. I know Anthony has some documents that you all will be receiving. So we would appreciate as much as possible your expeditious responses. And thank you. We look forward to working with you this school year.
And I sent our team a Google an invitation for Zoom. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, CTA team. You all have a great day.
Bye, everybody.